with demand expected to come back, the question remains, does this mean the economy is back on track?
Companies now, after experimenting with offshore in places like India, Philippines, and Poland, want to bring those jobs back.
We invest in the U.S. We're the biggest exporter in the country. In the cycle we're in right now, we're creating jobs.
From Radio America, it's Neil Asbury's Made in America, the show that explores American industry, large and small, and promotes American-made products everywhere. Put Neil Asbury's Made in America to work for you.
A very big welcome to you today. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruff. And boy, do we have an incredible show today. So much to talk about, so much that is going on. I'm personally pleased to see in our country, things are getting back to normal. I mean, more places are opening up. I see President Trump running around the country in these airport hangars and with Air Force One there and huge crowds coming out to see him. It's good to see us kind of getting back to normal and expressing ourselves. Football is back, though the stadiums are empty. At least people are playing. They're on the field. And I hope sports remains this place that you could just go and relax and enjoy. And it's not some political advertisement. But we're going to have to see what happens, especially with the NFL season. But it is kicked off. And it was a pretty good game, actually. And the Kansas City Chiefs are looking really, really good. They're going to be hard to beat. Can't wait to see Tom Brady and in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We haven't talked about the Buccaneers in a long time, so finally they're back in the headlines. So hopefully with this normalcy, people will start coming out of their shells. And I was out in a parking lot today, and throughout this whole COVID thing, you could park anywhere. And today I drove around a few times in this parking lot waiting for someone to leave. And there was just a lot of people out, and you're seeing that more and more now. So hopefully, that's a sign of things to come, that we won't see a reemergence of COVID that some people are talking about in the fall. And we can start getting our lives together, and people can go out and our restaurants can open. I can see now in the state of Florida, they're opening up their bars, 50% capacity. That's a very big deal for every county except Miami-Dade. And you're seeing that more and more. You're seeing theaters starting to open now. You're seeing amusement parks starting to open now. So, good signs, good signs. We need that. We need that as a country. Obviously, we got a presidential election in front of us here. It's not that many days away. A lot of very, very important issues, talking about the economy, of course, about COVID, about getting our people back to work. What kind of country do we want? Who are we as a people? So many big topics. But, something very important that a president does, probably one of his biggest powers, is appointing judges. Throughout the federal judiciary, but especially the Supreme Court, but not limited to the Supreme Court. And President Trump released a list of who, some of the candidates that he would put on the Supreme Court. And for me, no surprises there. And then you have Joe Biden, who doesn't seem to want to talk about judges. And our first guest has published a piece in the Wall Street Journal. And it's entitled, Why Biden Won't Talk About Judges, one of the most important responsibilities of a president. We're very pleased to have on with us Ilya Shapiro. He's from the Cato Institute, and he is their legal and judiciary expert. Ilya, welcome to Made in America.
Good to be on, and I love the Billy Joel intro music you have.
Okay, well, thank you. It's a great tune, right? It's a great tune, and a great tune for Made in America. Singing about our manufacturing segment. But anyway, the piece that you wrote, very, very fascinating piece, and we are starting to hear about judges and how important judges are. And you got Justice Ginsburg, who I would almost bet anything that the next president will be, or whoever gets elected, whether Trump or Biden, will be fulfilling that a vacancy there. People are talking about Clarence Thomas. Is he going to retire in the next 4 years. Some of our justices are just up there in age right now. So the next president is going to make a very, very important decision that's going to impact America for a long, long time. So why isn't Vice President Biden talking about judges?
Well, the simple answer is that historically the judges issue in the Supreme Court is more a motivating factor for Republican voters and one on which voters in general prefer Republican messaging to Democratic messaging. That is the idea that the Constitution should be interpreted according to its original public meaning, not the intent of the founders, but what the words meant on the page when they were enacted. The idea of the statutes being interpreted according to their text, not trying to divine some sort of congressional legislative intent. All of this kind of messaging that what kinds of judges to select, that generally benefits the Republican candidate. So historically, with the exception of Bill Clinton in 1992, Democrats have not talked about judges. Even 4 years ago when Justice Scalia died and there was that looming vacancy that was already there, Hillary Clinton did not talk about Merrick Garland or what she would do with the court. And so Biden is continuing that, even though he himself has a long history as chairman of the Judiciary Committee and otherwise involved in judicial selection and confirmation processes. But a lot of that history also doesn't paint him in too good a light.
So the Democrats really complained a lot about Trump over the last 4 years and about fulfilling judges, and the amount of judges that he has appointed has been really historic, and they certainly complained about it a lot. You would think that they would really be relishing the idea to show what they're going to do differently. I'm surprised by all that.
Yeah, early in the Democratic primaries, like a year ago, everybody was jumping on top of each other to propose court packing or term limits or other more radical changes to the Supreme Court, and to lambaste President Trump for his judges, and especially Mitch McConnell for getting rid of the Supreme Court filibuster and ramming through these judges through the Senate. Indeed, I think this is President Trump's biggest accomplishment. We're at 205, I think, now confirmed federal judges, 53 circuit judges. That's the level just below the Supreme Court, which is second best for any one term, second only to Jimmy Carter's one term, and because that was kind of a consolation prize for Carter, who didn't get to appoint any Supreme Court justices. But anyway, a year later, and it's all you don't hear any of that. Even Kamala Harris, who has taken pride in voting against 80% of the judicial nominations on which she's been there for a recorded vote, but still will not talk about that, as opposed to COVID and the economy and these racial justice issues and everything else. So I think Trump is trying to force the issue by releasing this list. He's trying to maybe put pressure on Biden to come up with his own list and what have you. But we'll see. Yeah, less than 2 months until the election. This should be a major issue.
Ilya, something that you just mentioned about packing the court, and one thing you did hear a lot about, when Kavanaugh got confirmed, the Democrats were saying, and this was all over the media, when we get in, we're just going to add a couple of more justices, and we're just going to, make it 11 instead of 9, and we're just going to appoint 2 more justices, and they're going to be our justices, and now we're going to have the majority. I mean, that's a pretty scary thought. Can that be done? I mean, is there a path to do that that's somewhat solid?
It doesn't require a constitutional amendment like certain other types of reforms that have been proposed. It just takes a normal act of Congress. There's, of course, a filibuster in the Senate for legislation still, so they would first have to get rid of the filibuster in the Senate and then simply pass a bill adding seats to the Supreme Court. Historically, this has not been not inured to the benefit of the party that's done it. FDR most recently, hasn't been proposed that often, but in 1937, when FDR proposed packing the court, adding, I think, 6 justices, that was hugely unpopular, and the Democrats went on to lose, I think, 80 seats in the House and 8 in the Senate after just 2 years after FDR himself had been overwhelmingly reelected. And historically, there's other examples, which is why we've had that number 9 for over 150 years now. So Joe Biden hasn't agreed that he wants to pack the court. So I don't know if it's going to be one of their top priorities.
So what do you think about the filibuster? Will it survive with a Democrat president and potentially a Democrat Senate?
I don't know. There's going to be a lot of pressure from the base, certainly, to pass things like the Green New Deal, more taxes, other things that would not survive a filibuster in the Senate. So there seems to be appetite. It really depends on how large the Democratic majority is, because if it's just 50-50 with Vice President Kamala Harris breaking the vote, then I doubt every last one of the Democratic senators would go for it. If there's a more comfortable margin, perhaps. But I think they'd have to build up to it. I think they'd have to try to pass various kinds of legislation and be foiled and then tell the American people, see, the Republicans are obstructing, now we have to get rid of the filibuster. It'll probably go on something like that. I can see them trying to do that.
Ilya, we got to take a quick break. We're with Ilya Shapiro from the Cato Institute. We're talking about the federal courts. Very, very important regulation and different things that goes through the courts. Very big impact on our businesses, our small businesses, our entrepreneurs. Stick around for Ilya. We're going to be right back.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman, and we're having a fascinating discussion with Ilya Shapiro from the Cato Institute, a legal expert and very, very knowledgeable about our federal court system, and tracks it very, very closely, tracks the president, as well as Vice President Biden, where we see President Trump seems to have a real vision, has a lot of names, and the Democrats, specifically Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, are being very quiet on what type of nominees to the Supreme Court that they would be suggesting. So, Ilya, we talked about Joe Biden, and he doesn't have a clue. He doesn't have a clue about a lot of stuff, but he doesn't tell us about what his judges would look like. Very, very important appointees, and it would be really fascinating to know that. I'm surprised he's not doing it, because that would be really something to show the real lefties, the real fanatics, the lunatic left, that he's one of them. But he's steering clear of that. But you said President Trump. Now he has put forth a list. What do you think about what he's suggesting to do if he should get a second term?
Yeah, this isn't the first time he's put out a list. In fact, there are still 24 people left over from the previous list or lists. It came out in several stages. What he did 4 years ago in 2016, putting out that list, was unprecedented. It breaks the rules of politics. You typically don't put out these potential candidates, whether for your cabinet or for judges or anything else, because that puts a target on their backs. It also gives your opposition precise ideas and people to attack. But Trump felt he needed to do it. It was a shrewd move to consolidate his support within the Republican Party. People didn't know where he was coming from. He had been a pro-choice Democrat basically earlier in his career, and so needed to make some assurances, and he did that, creating this list. And then now he has a track record. Those judges that we mentioned that he's gotten confirmed of very generally excellent people. So he didn't need to add to that list or create a new list, but he did earlier this week, adding 20 more names. So now there are 44. Some people call it a short list. 44 people is not a very short list. But this list, these additions, they're a little more political. There are 3 senators that were added, Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, and Tom Cotton. There were several members of the administration. There's the young Attorney General of Kentucky. Anyway, kind of to appeal to different segments of the party, potential voters in different parts of the country, racial diversity as well, a lot of women there, social conservatives, different parts ideologically of his coalition. Generally, it excites the base and gets this topic of judges back in the news because, as I said, this is generally a winning issue for Republicans and generally has been a winning issue for Donald Trump. And I should mention, my publisher would kill me. I have a book coming out right on these very subjects in a week and a half called Supreme Disorder, Judicial Nominations and the Politics of America's Highest Court. You can get that on Amazon or wherever books are sold.
Well, that's very, very important, and it's good to finally be here. This is Dr. Rich. How are you? I'm very interested in what you're saying. Number one, would we expect anything less from Donald Trump than to have a huge list, not a normal list, not a small list, but a bigger than ever list of the judges that he wants? I think I agree with everything you said. I think it's very, very important that he does that. It also it raises the bar for Biden, which, if he can find the bar, it raises the bar for Biden. It also shows, which ironically is what was in Biden's speech just the other day, promises made, promises kept, except Biden said promises made, promises not kept, which I found remarkable that he could say that. But I think it's very, very important that he does that, because he showed with his first list, I nominated these people. I fought to get them in. I got them in. Along the way, he found out that some of the other judges, such as the chief judge, were not watching his back, were not true to the conservative concept of judicial watch. And I find it interesting that he put someone I know personally is Tom Cotton out of Arkansas. It's interesting that he got these strong individuals who have gone on the limb and defended the constitutional legalities that some of the others on the Democratic side have not. So I think the list that he came out with absolutely raises the bar, reinforces where his mind is at and what we've done in the first term for this president, and letting them know I'm putting the Democrats and everybody else on notice that I am upholding the Constitution and I'm coming forward for you in the second term.
Yeah, I mean, that's his purpose in doing that, absolutely. I think it's a slightly different purpose than what he needed to do in 2016 when there was an open question about what kind of judges he would appoint. Now he's kind of trying to both reward and honor people, as you said, who have supported him and his agenda, as well as making appeals to voters in different parts of the country and different groups that, like Senator Tom Cotton or like the Kentucky Attorney General, Daniel Cameron, or whomever. So as well as putting pressure now on Biden to release a list, or at least talk about why he's not releasing a list.
Ilya, one thing that I've noticed is that even though that there's been a lot of federal judges appointed by President Trump, there's still a lot of liberal courts in our country. And whenever there's a liberal cause, they find a liberal court and they go there, and essentially they can shut down anything, almost anything that the president wants to do. And then now it gets all, going, through this whole legal procedure that could take months or years before policy can actually get enacted. And you have activist courts, and that's what they do. They're political arms of the Democrat Party. But you also have conservative courts, too, that did very similar things to President Obama. A lot of his agenda got shut down in the courts. So in our country, we still have these liberal courts and conservative courts, and that whole idea of being able to shut down policies from the American president is still going to be around us despite President Trump's success in appointing federal judges. Is that correct?
Well, I would hope so, because a lot of what presidents of both parties, whether Trump or Obama or their predecessors, increasingly they govern from the White House without passing legislation. And that's been a problem. Congress, the idea of President Obama said, when Congress won't act, I will. Well, there's not if Congress doesn't act, the president gets more power clause in the Constitution. And so while I certainly don't agree with everything what the courts did either under Obama or under Trump, it's important for courts to check the president, to check Congress as well, for that matter. But some of this dynamic is certainly the executive acting with the pen and the phone and the tweet now, I guess, and not simply courts being activists or getting it wrong.
Very good. Hey, Ilya, very, very good conversation. I really enjoyed it. Ilya Shapiro from the Cato Institute, we really, really appreciate you being on the show.
My pleasure. I tell you, if your listeners want to buy my book, Supreme Disorder, Judicial Nominations, and the Politics of America's Highest Court, if you send me your address and your proof of purchase, I'm happy to send you a signed book plate, since I can't do in-person book signings these days.
Hey, wow, that's a great thing. Ilya, thanks for that. I'll be sending you my address.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Coming up, we have Tim Phillips, the president of Americans for Prosperity, and we're going to talk about the Senate's skinny proposal for COVID relief, which was voted down. But where is COVID relief going? Is there going to be any before the election? You don't want to miss it. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Sharply higher at the open, stocks continued to perform well over the course of the day Tuesday.
And I think that bodes well here over the next couple of years for having bigger demands coming to this country.
Now, more of Neil Asbury's Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. And Rich, we're together with right now Tim Phillips, the president for Americans for Prosperity. Tim, welcome to Made in America.
Thanks, Neil. Good afternoon.
So, hey, Tim, I know that you played a big role in the Tea Party and, that very exciting part of American history. And, I spoke at various Tea Party events, and it was really great. I mean, they read the Constitution, and it was like, they came there to learn and to study and to talk and to share ideas. It was very great. And just recently, Rich and I had on the show ex-Senator DeMint from South Carolina, and he was a really big guy in the Tea Party and was a kingmaker in the Tea Party. In fact, a lot of the politicians today who are in very senior positions came through the Tea Party, and Senator DeMint was a very, very powerful force there. So my first question is, what happened to the Tea Party? Is it there? Is it still very active? Is it just going, has it fragmented? I'm very curious because, this is an election and the Tea Party did incredible things. What was it in 2010? You had that very historic election where the Tea Party just routed Obama.
Oh, it stunned the electorate out.
Yeah,
it stunned them
and
with
it
the power that they had.
It did.
And I have a feeling that was one of the most pivotal moments in current history for us.
Well, it shut down Obama for the next 6 years.
Exactly. That's my point. I was kind of being nice about it. I don't have to be. Now that it's clear, we're not nice.
So what's up? What are you doing during this election?
Well, back to your question on the Tea Party, Neil. The Tea Party organizations, there were thousands of individual organizations that popped up, became entities, fought hard, got great candidates elected, like you just talked about. Not many of those groups are still there as groups, but here's why. Because they've moved in to the broader conservative movement, the Republican Party, the Trump infrastructure, and they've become part of that broad, conservative, freedom-oriented, prosperity-oriented movement that's out there across this country. And so literally, the Tea Party movement activated millions of Americans who had never really been that involved in the political process. And today, many of them are in key roles across the conservative movement, across Republican campaigns, and frankly, across the Trump administration and Trump campaign. So they are still playing a vital role in the freedom and prosperity movement. And with regard to Americans for Prosperity, the group I'm president of, on the policy front, we're right now fighting this bailout bill. I know you guys are familiar with Nancy Pelosi's bailout attempts. She's got a $3.5 trillion bill she passed through the House a few weeks ago, and we've been urging the Senate, especially those Republicans there, to reject these bailouts for big spending states like California and Connecticut and New York. It's not fair to all the states that are fiscally well managed to bail them out, and it's not what the country needs. So we're involved in that big battle to stop the bailout efforts. And so far, so good. The Republicans are holding firm in the Senate. We need to keep encouraging them to not pass some big multi-trillion-dollar boondoggle. But so far, so good on that effort.
Well, let me ask you this. Given what happened in the last few days, this week, when the Democrats blocked
the skinny version,
so we can help. We want to get money where it belongs to the people who needs the help for a situation that wasn't their fault. And 100%. You cannot have these inflated, gross bills that bail out good tax money to bad tax money, to bail out these incredibly misrun Illinois, for example, California, and so forth. So what happens now? I mean, how do we help out, and how do we, get over the finish line to help the folks out there?
Yeah, there's good news and bad news, and I'll start with the good news. The good news is the bill that Congress passed and the president signed into law back in early summer, or late spring, May, about $140 billion of that pandemic relief money is still in the pipeline and has not been spent helping first responders and the states that have been in localities that have been hit really hard by the pandemic. So there is still money in the pipeline. It takes months for the federal government, even the federal government, to spend that much money. So there is money in there for the most important priority areas and needs that are pandemic related. So that's the good news. The bad news is that the decision that needs to be made is what to do about American businesses, especially small businesses, but big ones too, that have been shut down, as you said, by act of the government, not by their own, volition. They've been shut down in their states. They had the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program. That's, winding down. The money is about out for that. And then you have Americans who are unemployed and have been getting some unemployment insurance. Again, because through no fault of their own, they were dumped on the unemployment rolls by this shutdown. Those are the two areas that are most in need of figuring out what to do next. And I can tell you at Americans for Prosperity, we are urging, let's reopen this economy at speed. States like Georgia and Florida and so many others now, South Dakota, are showing it can be done responsibly, safely. A lot of the states that have had the most draconian shutdowns, like California right now, are experiencing the fastest infection rates. So this pandemic, right now, there doesn't seem to be much of a correlation between states that are shut down not having many infections and states that are reopened having high infections. That's just not the case. I mean, California is exploding, and they've had the tightest shutdown, arguably one of the 2 or 3 tightest shutdowns in the country, along with New York State, Connecticut, New Jersey, and Hawaii. So we need to get this economy reopened again, continue to practice basic common sense, the social distancing, and I think mask wearing is a reasonable thing to ask folks to do. And I personally, when I'm out, I just got some ice cream and I put a mask on. So anyway, that's where we are right now, guys.
Hey, Tim, thanks for being on the show. I mean, the time went by really, really quick. You've been a great guest. Tim Phillips, the president of Americans for Prosperity. Come and join us again. Coming up, we have Hans von Spakovsky, and he's from the Heritage Foundation, and we're going to talk about the very hot topic of mail-in ballots. Are they safe? You don't want to miss it.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. Rich, man, we have been hearing a whole lot about mail-in ballots. And, I see some reports that the Democrats are way up and, the mail-in ballots, they're coming in and the Democrats are winning big. And I hear that maybe Republicans should change their tune because they're going to be doing really well with mail-in ballots. I mean, it's the battle of the mail-in ballots. So it's a fascinating topic. Are they safe? Are they not safe? I guess it depends, on what political side of the aisle you are. But very important topic, for this election cycle, obviously with COVID. And, let's kind of get to the bottom of this with our next guest, Hans von Spakovsky. He is from the Heritage Foundation, and he writes a lot about all kinds of things, but especially lately on mail-in ballots. Hans, welcome to Made in America.
Neil, I appreciate being on with you.
So tell us, just kind of cut to the chase. I mean, how risky is this?
Well, it's risky in a couple of ways. And this is nothing new. Look, 8 years ago, the New York Times actually wrote a story, and for the New York Times, it was a pretty good story about absentee or mail-in ballots. And what they pointed out, which has always been true, is that absentee ballots have a much higher rejection rate than ballots you cast in a polling place. So what that means is if you decide to vote through the mail instead of in person, the chances that your ballot won't count are much higher. And there's a number of reasons for this. I mean, first of all, you're dependent, rather than you putting your ballot in the ballot box, so it's going to get counted, you're depending on the U.S. Mail Service or a stranger to deliver your ballot. And the mail service, while, look, they generally do a pretty good job, they mess up when it comes to absentee ballots. And all you have to do is look at the most recent primaries that have been held around the country, and you'll see many reports of thousands of voters reporting that they didn't get their ballots delivered. And you'll see lots of reports of election officials rejecting absentee ballots that did come back to them because they weren't delivered on time, or in some instances, the U.S. Postal Service forgot to postmark the ballots, and so on the envelopes. And so that means election officials didn't know if the person had actually cast the ballot by the end of Election Day like they're required. The other big problem is, look, when you vote in a polling place, if there's a problem, there's no election official there you can talk to who can try to remedy the problem or answer your question. There's no election official in your home. And what that means is, unfortunately, again, people make mistakes with absentee ballots. They forget to sign them. They don't fill in all the information that you're required to supply with an absentee ballot. And so, again, your ballot gets rejected. The New York primary they held June 23rd, 1 in 5 ballots was rejected because of all of those different reasons.
Well, and that's very, very scary. And that's something that the Trump administration and anybody with a brain out there understands that this is a very, very dangerous way to go. See, what bothers me, Hans, is that everything you're saying, and I've been listening to you for so long, is correct. The ballot harvesting scares me. Anything that has to do with the mail other than absentee balloting, because we have been doing that for so long, and that works to a degree. It works, but at least it's registered, it's recognized, it's requested, it's identified. What scares me is that if we shift this discussion, which we have, because the Democrats are great at that, and bring it to, ballot mailing. Let's mail the ballots. Universal. 80 million. Hans, can you I'm sure nothing will go wrong with that, right? With 80 million ballots floating out there. I mean, wasn't it Al Franken that after the election was found, it was closed that night, they found many, many more ballots someplace in somebody's car, or it was left out, or a gymnasium, or they found them, and he actually won, and he was the guy who helped get Obamacare passed. To me, it scares the living daylights.
Well, it should. And look, we're talking about just, mistakes being made, but when it comes to election fraud, the fraud that seems to occur the most often is absentee ballot fraud. And again, it's because they're the only kind of ballots you're voting outside the supervision of election officials. And if you're in a state that allows vote harvesting, which is unfortunately more than half the country, that means that any stranger can come to your front door to offer to pick up your ballot, which does what? It puts candidates, campaign staffers, political consultants in the position of being able to pressure and try to coerce you to vote a particular way. And again, that's a common feature in the proven absentee ballot fraud cases that have occurred. And look, anybody who thinks this doesn't go on, take a look at our election fraud database we maintain at the Heritage Foundation. It's not even a comprehensive list, just a sampling of proven cases. And there's all kinds of cases like that. Look, right now, they're redoing the election in Paterson, New Jersey, Patterson made the mistake of saying, well, we have to have an all-male election for their municipal election, which was some weeks ago. They're redoing the election because the outcome is in dispute, and 4 locals have been criminally charged with absentee ballot fraud. And one of the things that led to that was they found hundreds of ballots, absentee ballots, bundled together and put in a postal mailbox to be picked up by the Postal Service in a town outside of Patterson. Now, how did those ballots get in a postal box outside of Patterson when only people in Patterson are voting? And why were they all bundled together if they only came from one particular voter? That raised suspicions that these were all fraudulently filled out.
Incredible. Hey, Hans, very, very fascinating information. We'd like to check in with you from time to time over the next couple of months. I read a piece, we got to go, but I just got to say this. I read a piece in Bloomberg that said Trump will win on election night, but then once the absentee ballots the mail-in ballots are counted, the election will turn. Imagine what that is going to do to this country. But Hans, unfortunately, we can't talk about that now. We're going to have to get you back real soon. Hans van Spakovsky from the Heritage Foundation, we really appreciate you coming on the show.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Coming up, Dr. Rothman and I are going to have some final thoughts for the day.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, a lot of things to talk about still many, many things, many topics this week. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time, but something that was very ominous that Joe Biden said this week. And he said that, from the first day in office, that he'll raise taxes on our companies. Not a good idea, considering how fragile, our recovery still is, right? I mean, think about unemployment. It's at 8.7%. I mean, that's amazing considering what was going on in April and May, to recover that many jobs that quickly.
Well, we effectively replaced and put back almost half the jobs that we lost back in March and April. Well, this is a remarkable quick turnaround.
It was remarkable. And, during the whole Obama administration, I mean, unemployment was over 10% for a good part of it. But, 8.7 during the Obama administration would have been, they'd have been cheering for that number. And this is after, the biggest economic crisis, I don't know of the century, but very close to it, if you consider the Great Depression as being in that list of economic malaise. But he says, look, hey, we're going to just raise taxes. We're going to bring back all of these regulations. We're just going to just over-regulate. I can't imagine what some of that is going to look like. But our entrepreneurial class, our small businesses, our inventors, our risk takers are just starting to get on their feet. And boy, what a mistake that would be.
Well, it's interesting when you look at the shopping list that Kamala and Joe Biden come with and are presenting, at least the stuff that they're presenting. I mean, we've already discussed the fact that they're hiding who their judges would be, because that would scare the heck out of anybody who has a brain. But think about that, Neil. They also want to tax higher dividends. They want to tax dividends, raise that tax. So everyone along the way, short-term, long-term capital gains, all of that is going to actually, it depletes the economy, Neil. It scares people.
Well, it's taking money away from the most productive part of the economy
and giving it to the government, and it disappears.
The least
just
productive, and it's just down a big black hole. Flushing it down to Potomac. I mean, that money is just lost forever, where it could be investing in technology and software and manufacturing equipments and inventories
Neil.
And people and training and education.
Why do entrepreneurs invest in a concept, put it that way? They're looking for they don't mind the risk, because entrepreneurs can handle risk, but they're looking for the reward, aren't they? At some point, there's a payoff. That's why a lot of the drug companies will pay billions of dollars to create a drug. And then they have that drug, and they expect to get a return on their $2.5 billion investment to create this new miracle drug that they have for pneumonia, whatever else it is. They're entitled to that. So what happens when you take away that incredible payoff for somebody for taking that risk and willing, when you're an entrepreneur and you throw out this money, you have to be able to look at it and say, if I lose it, I lose it. That's what I do. And someday I'll get a big payoff again. Some work, some don't, but that's the game. So what happens when you eliminate that ability to make a really big payoff and it becomes clouded, taken away, and all you're going to wind up doing is giving it to guys like, Joe Biden. Yeah, it's very, very discouraging. So why is it then, Neil, that people out there are saying, you got to get Trump out? I mean, they're running on that anyway. That's the whole point. We got to get Trump out because, we have to get Trump out because it'll make America better. Why? We just have to get him out. You have to do that. It's very dangerous. So why do people then say, I want the Democrats in. I want Biden in. I want, Kamala Harris in. And when you look at exactly what you just said, what does Trump want to do? He wants to lower taxes, lower regulations. He wants to increase, the ability for people to be in the American game, the American dream. And then on the other side, you have the other people saying, I'm going to raise your taxes. I'm going to raise your that's personal, too, by the way. I'm going to raise your corporate taxes. I'm going to increase regulations. I'm going to increase the amount and what you pay for fuel, which raises everything. That creates inflation along the way. And someone is telling me, and this happens to all of us every day, wow, I can't wait for that.
Well, there's a lot of people out there that seems to be supporting it.
It's like, I just want to hit them. I don't get it. It's like 2 and 2 is what? 17. All right. Well, everyone's entitled to an opinion.
Well, we don't have a lot of time left, but I'm really worried for New York City. We got 30 seconds, and you are the consummate New Yorker. I'm from across the river in New Jersey, but you are the consummate. Grew up in Manhattan. It just scares the bejesus out of me to see what's going on in this city that I love so much. I don't know how they're going to recover. I really don't, Restaurants, what de Blasio is saying that, hey, look, maybe you can open in spring. 10 seconds.
Well, if they don't do something soon, they are going to lose the city to a degree. Because why will people want to come there? Why will people want to grow there? Why will people want to invest there? Why do the corporations want to be there? You're 100% correct. You should be scared. And we've got to turn this real fast.
We got to. Well, Rich, unfortunately, we're out of time. But we're going to be back again next week for another adventure of Made in America, where we never stop fighting for your jobs.